welcome to tonight's Skillshare. The purpose of these sessions is to share the wisdom and experience across the transition movement and beyond, because groups working for social change are often wrestling with the same issues and often coming up with great solutions that can inspire and help elsewhere. We've been doing these sessions about monthly, and we'll share details later about what's coming up and how to watch back previous sessions that have taken place. These Skillshares are brought to you by Transition Together, an organisation set up to support community-led change in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, working with our partners in Scotland, by connecting, amplifying and offering practical support and funding to a growing network of transition groups across the country. And these sessions are just one of the ways that we do that, and you can find out more about all the other events and training and our seed funding programme on the links which Mike is just about to put in the chat. Tonight we're here to explore how, as communities, we can respond to the cost of living crisis. We know for many people it's a daily challenge to afford food, heating, to travel where they need to go, and other everyday essentials. And we know that everyone is not equally affected. I've always found the image of a storm really helpful, that we might all be in the same storm, but we don't all have the same boat in which to weather that storm. Some people have robust and well-equipped ships, and others are tossed about by the waves in a small dinghy. Even among the people in this Zoom room and in the local communities that we're part of, these pressures will be showing up differently. So the reality is that many people struggle to pay for their basic needs long before inflation pushed up last year and the term cost of living crisis hit the headlines. Spiraling food and energy prices are symptoms of our broken, unresilient systems and ultimately need systemic solutions. But that doesn't mean that we as community activists have to sit back and wait for others to act. And neither do we have to leave individual people and families to fend for themselves. Our speakers tonight are showing how community organisations, specifically transition groups, can and are making an impact locally to open up access to food, to give people new choices about energy and heating, to come together with others and address the needs in their community together rather than in isolation. So we're really looking forward to a very timely, practical and inspiring conversation. So let's get started. Our first speaker is Joe Layton from Transition Constantine in southern Cornwall. Transition Constantine set up a free food stall to distribute and rescue surplus food in their Cornish village, working with shops, gleaners and individuals and reaching across the community, transforming the stigma of collecting free food into a culture of sharing. Earlier this year, thanks to a Transition Together seed funding grant, they were able to develop the stall and add a roof so that it can be used year-round. And it's also led them to explore other ways of sharing food, cooking and growing in their communities. Thank you, Joe, for telling us more about the impact of the project. Over to you.
I'm Jo, and I'm from Transition Constantine. And so what I'm going to tell you, I'll tell you a little bit about who we are, where we are, what our project is, the next steps, and a little bit about our hopes and dreams. So we are Transition Constantine, and our group started about 16 years ago. It started very small, but recently it's got a lot bigger, especially since the pandemic. And we've gone more to like a daisy model with lots of little interconnecting groups, of which the food group is one of them. So we have the other groups that we have a farmers market, which happens every month. We have a newspaper. We have making space for nature, and several people are in more than one group. So I'm in the food group and the farmers market group, and we found that's a really good way of skill sharing across the groups and like passing on information and things like that. So I'll tell you where we are. So you can see the map there. This little red rectangle is where the pop-out map is, and the dotted line on the pop-out map is the parish of Constantine. So it's a big area, but not many people. So it's very rural. There's about 2,000 people in our parish, and about 1,000 of them live in the main village, which is where our stall is situated. Economically, we're a very diverse population in the village, ranging from really wealthy landowners to people who rely on seasonal work and really struggle to make ends meet. So our village is situated halfway between Falmouth, which is a university town, and Helston, where RNAS Cold Rose is, and we're about 5 miles from each place. So it's very rural. There's only a few lanes in and out. And the food project, whoops, if I go on to the next screen, our food project started after a chance conversation in the local spa. We've got a shop in the village, a spa shop, a church, a village art space, which has got a museum in it, and strangely, a really good wine shop, which is quite bizarre, but anyway. So yeah, a chance conversation in the spa shop, where the shop owner was really worried that there were some people in the village who just couldn't afford the basics like milk and bread. And so we decided to try and, there was a food, sorry, I'm waffling now, calm down. We had a food bank in the village, but in such a small community, the stigma of using a food bank, you're highly visible. So a lot of people just weren't bothering to go because of that. So we came up with this idea of starting a food waste stall. And you can see that first picture there on the side. It literally started on a trestle table. We have the roads in our village are very small, and there was a turning circle outside the house of 2 of our members, Mike and Rosie. And that happens to be right next door to where the doctor's surgery is. So it was the ideal location to put the stall, and that's how it started, just literally on that turning space on a trestle table. And then we applied for a seed funding grant from Transition and got it, and built the much nicer wooden stall that you can see there in the next picture. And that sort of started it running. And then we made contact with some food waste charities, Neighbourly, Fairshare and Caboodle. And after checking that we had a viable project and all the necessary food hygiene certification, they helped us set up regular donations with local supermarkets. So Fairshare works with Asda and Tesco's, and Neighbourly works with Sainsbury's and Lidl, and Caboodle works with a co-op. And so we have regular collections with them. We can't have any anything that needs a freezer, so we could really only have tins and fresh veg and produce like that. So initially, when we applied for the funding, we had the idea of having another stall at the other end of the village, because our village is quite long and spread out. But after evaluating it, we realised that the location that we have is so good, because literally everyone in the village goes to the doctors at some point. And so it was really, really obvious. And the idea is that the food is free for anyone to take. You just help yourself, basically. You don't have to meet any criteria, and it's outside, so you can just help yourself as you go past. We set up a team of collectors, and we gathered information about who was making a regular journey to the places, Falmouth and Helston, where our main collections are, because we didn't want people to do extra journeys. And we've now sort of organised that by 2 WhatsApp groups. We have one WhatsApp group which looks at the running of the stall, and another one which is just about collections. And initially, the collections one was only people in transition. So there's about 20 or 30 people who operate in transition. But recently we found that as word about the stall spreads, more people have become interested. And so we've made that one open so that anyone who hears of another person who makes a regular trip to Falmouth or Helston can be added in without any sort of having to be a member or anything. So that's quite good at like spreading the news and getting more people interested in what Transition's doing. The stalls quickly become a really valued asset in the village, which is fabulous to hear. The donations that we get are quite varied. Sometimes we get some brilliant things, and other times we get mainly bread. The amount of bread that supermarkets waste is just obscene. We have so much. We can't take it all. We've got recipes. We put recipes in we have a transition newspaper in there, recipes at the farmers market, and recipes have been left on the stall to try and use up the stale bread. It was getting so bad, but then one of our members, Mike, heard of a farmer who has pigs. So we bought a metal dustbin, and when the dustbin is full, they come now and take that away, and it's gone. It goes to the pig, so it's not wasted. What else was I going to say? Yes. During the summer, we had a few incidents of misuse on the stall. It was probably children bored in the summer holidays messing about, but it was so heartening to see the village Facebook group posting messages to say, we're so lucky to have this stall in our village, please respect it and look after it. And it's quickly becoming a really valued asset in the community. It hasn't been without its problems. That's just one example. There's been lots of discussion about the viability of having it open to all. Would the food get to those who really needed it? Would some people roll up with their car boots and fill up and put all the stuff in their freezer? But actually what we've found that's happened is, instead of doing that, when people have gone on holiday, they've bought what's left in their fridge or whatever that they know will be wasted before they come back, and put that on the stall. When in the summer, when people had a lot of glut on their allotments or in their gardens, that ended up on the stall as well, which is really, really, it's a really good thing to see. That because the donations are so flexible, what we decided to do was keep a pot of funds that we could use to top up the store with basic tins and things, and so that there would always be something there. And we've raised some extra funds at the farmers market by doing a raffle and offering hot food to take away, which links into the next part of our project. I'll tell you more about that later. Another way of keeping the stall stocked is that we've made links with the Gleaning Cornwall network, which is mainly because two of our members, Mike and Rosie, also belong to the Gleaning network and regularly volunteer on a gleaning team. I don't know if you know what gleaning is, but it's basically where you can go into the fields that have been harvested, or we had one recently where the farmer had lost the sale of their potatoes, so people can go and gather stuff there. And the Gleaning Cornwall started when a lady called Holly Whitelaw had watched Cornwall with Simon Reeves, which was on a couple of years ago. I don't know if any of you saw it, which highlighted the often unseen poverty that there is in Cornwall, and particularly the work of one of the food banks here. And she set up the Gleaning network to salvage produce, and it's distributed to food banks, soup kitchens and charities across the county, of which we're just one of them. I believe it's the biggest gleaning network in the UK and possibly in Europe. And I've missed the picture. You've missed the picture there, because there is lovely Mike gleaning away in the fields. It's amazing what beautiful vegetables that they gather. Another connection that we made is some of our other team members were members of another food-based charity project, the Falmouth Food Co-op Kitchen Delivery Service. And they cook on a Thursday. The team here take over a kitchen at a local venue, and they cook 4 vegetarian main courses and a pudding that is then distributed to about 80 people in the local community. So we saw this as an ideal way of getting rid of some of our excess bread. And you can see there Alan making a bread and butter bread pudding that was part of the kitchen. But it was so good to make this connection, because the food co-op get donations from farmers around the area, and if they don't use it all in the cook, it might not last till the next week. So we then bought that back and put that on our stall. So it was just amazing to see that sort of circular relationship develop in that way. The next stage of our project that we would like to do is to teach people how to use slow cookers and give slow cookers away to people to use free. So we've done several demonstrations. You can see there Lynn doing it. We did a demonstration at the community day last year, and this one is from the farmers market just last week actually, where the food that was cooked was then given away free, or people could make a donation, so that those donations then help to fund our reserved pot. It's been really well received, but we're very aware that the audience at the farmers market is a very, very niche audience, and we think it's not necessarily reaching the people that we really want to reach. So our next plan is to have a cookout on the doctor's car park. We're trying to get permission to have a cookout on the doctor's car park, which is actually right next door to the stall, and it's also, there's a large area of social housing in our village, and that's quite near that, so it's that end of the village. So we hope that we'll get more people to be involved in that way, because what we would really our big dream is that we would have people across the generations involved and across the economic wealth, like how wealthy people are, not just a few people who go to the farmers market and buy their lovely organic vegetables, but to get the whole village involved. So probably the most important thing that we've learned through the project is that it's the connections between people that are really important. So having a named person to talk to at the charity or in the supermarket has been really powerful in making sure that we get really good donations, other than just relying on the apps, which are good, but they don't always work. You don't always get what you say you're going to get. And just chatting to people about the other things that they're involved in has made the connections. That's how we found out about the cleaning from Mike and Rosie and the food kitchen. So our long-term dreams would be to see our transition membership grow across the whole village and across the generations, particularly for skills to be shared and developed as a community, like the cooking skills. Conversations at the community day have given us a good idea that there's a wealth of knowledge in our village, but some people think that their knowledge is not valuable, and it is valuable. It's all really, really valuable. So we want to sort of build up the community spirit. We'd love to begin a growing project at some point in the future, because we know that the issue of food poverty is only going to get worse. And the key really is to start small and dream big. We've learned not to stick rigidly to a long-term plan, but to constantly evaluate and reassess what's going on and change the project as the needs arise. And we're definitely excited to see how the project will grow going forward. So I hope I haven't waffled too much.
Thank you so much, Jo. It's so interesting to hear of all the different threads and things that are coming off that. And I love that's going to be my motto now: start small and dream big. I think that's really good inspiration for all of us. Now we're moving from Cornwall all the way to Belfast. And I'm delighted to introduce Nicola Foster from Footprints Women's Centre in West Belfast. Footprints was established in 1991 and became a transition initiative in 2010. It's a community anchor organisation working directly with women, children and local organisations to bring about positive change. And Nicola reflects that women are more vulnerable to poverty and food insecurity, and also more likely to earn less. So the purpose-built facility provides family and women's support, crisis intervention, training, childcare, daycare provision, healthy living projects and volunteering opportunities. Nicola herself is a food science and nutrition graduate, currently studying for a master's. She believes that food and nutrition, knowledge and skills should be available for all, and that food is the vehicle to bring people together. In 2017, as a response to a growing number of referrals to food banks, Footprints opened one of the first social supermarkets in Northern Ireland as a temporary crisis intervention. Understanding the complexities of deprivation and health inequalities, in line with Footprint's ethos of taking a holistic approach, many workshops have since been designed around the social supermarket, including cooking skills, nutritional knowledge, and growing your own food. Now, Nicola has some internet issues. She's with us tonight, but she sent through a recorded presentation just in case the internet failed us. So I'm going to share my screen and hope that this plays okay. And Nicola will be here to join us for the conversation and react to any questions. So let's just see if this is going to cooperate.
A bit of background on me. I came to Footprint as a placement student in my undergraduate year a couple of years ago, and a complete another passionate about food and nutrition, and I very quickly seen how my values aligned with Footprint's. I am an advocate for food and nutritious food. Really shouldn't be something that anybody has to consider. It just shouldn't. But we all know that it is something that many people have to consider every day and worry about every day in their lives. Firstly, I thought it would be easier to show you a little snippet of the centre, just so that you have an idea while I'm talking of what it looks like. I think a visual always helps. Okay, so I hope I'll give you a really good overview of what the centre looks like while I'm chatting. And it shows you the actual space that we do have. We were able to then have a childcare facility put in, which is part of our social enterprise to then bring money back into the charity to try and help sustain us. As well as that, we do advice and referrals to those who need, whether that's Women's Aid or any of those sort of entities, and benefit advice. But with our social supermarket then, after many years of observing overwhelming need and referrals to the food banks, it just kept happening over and over that Eileen had worked hard and thought there has to be something other than this. There has to be something that we could be doing to provide. Transition Together actually supplied the first initial training and learning that then with their videos, I think that was back in 2010, with their videos then they worked together with some of the members at the centre to really discover how they could look at food waste and look at what opportunities that they could bring to sort of help the community, but also considering what's happening in the world today. This led then to the food grow in our garden then started to be developed, and apple trees, the orchard was planted, and lots of growing started happening. But it was then in partnership with, there was many businesses, government, funders and other charities. Eileen, my manager, had presented the case then of the possibilities of a social supermarket, and we were successful then in Northern Ireland in 2017, becoming one of the first of 5 to open. In line with the centre's ethos, the social supermarket sort of goes alongside within the holistic care. We always consider that, you know, no one thing or no one entity is going to actually help somebody all of a sudden just get out of the issues that they may be having. So what we do is you would sign up to the social supermarket. Usually it's those with the need. They'll maybe supply a bit of proof, you know, like your usual tax credits or universal credit or anything like that. And then what they can do then is come along to what we have as enrolment days, and they can find out about workshops or accredited training or volunteering opportunities, and just get a chat with the facilitators like myself to see what there is for them to help start building them up as a person as well, and creating a support network. The workshops that I've been doing, there's been so many recently. Because we had the partnership with PwC, we have the wonderful kitchen that you've seen in the video. And this meant it opened up so many more opportunities that we can actually get cooking together. And all the women will come in. We've done OCN accredited courses in food and nutrition, but also just the social side of it. I was very aware that, especially after COVID, there's so many women who maybe would be sitting in the house on their own, and it takes a lot to maybe pull them out. But food, I find, is a really good vehicle to bring people together. So we would go into the kitchen and we'd be cooking and chatting, but it's a really easy, well, maybe it just lets conversation flow. You're able to maybe get lentils or beans where people wouldn't never really have eaten them before. Oh, I don't buy those. Oh, I see them in the social supermarket all the time. And it's a good way to be able to get them to try them, but also to chat about the nutritious benefits, the health benefits that they could get from actually implementing these, and their family get from implementing these into their diet. And that's what I love about it, because it's so relaxed and everybody becomes so much more open. And you'll actually find, like whenever we done a very simple one at the start, and it was, you know, revamp your family favorites. So we took like spaghetti bolognese. Most people would use that as a family staple. And what they done then was we done one that was half meat and half lentils, and then we done one that was purely lentils. And what we found was, I would say, there was probably 10 out of the 12 that attended that preferred the lentils and have gone on to cook the lentils at home, and things like that are really amazing. But yes, so then how do we do it? I suppose you want to know, how do we continue to operate, because as you know yourselves, it can be extremely difficult. What we found the most important with us was being really open to collaboration and sharing. We like to do this all the time. We constantly have people coming around for viewings at the centre to hear about what we do. But it means then that you're meeting and you're networking with some really important and vital entities. You find if you're open to partnerships, and people know that you're approachable, or you offer volunteering opportunities for the companies. Like one of the photos there on the video you would have seen, that was Belfast Harbour Group came in to help us with the garden, which was amazing. We got free labour. But what we actually found then was they had a little funding pot, and they were like, oh my goodness, you're doing so much here. We would really love to be able to help with that. You should really apply. It just opens up so many more opportunities, and we're always learning. It's like the transition together was one of the main things that brought up upon the social supermarket and the food growing. It really did plant the seed, so to speak, to then help us to learn and then discover how we were going to sustain the charity and work our way from there. And I have to say, we have to always be up for adapting, whether a funding pot all of a sudden comes up and we're just like rushing to do it, or we're adapting to members' needs and trying to find other things that we can offer. And we're always planning, I would say, 10 steps ahead. That's the key. That's, you know, all of that together is how we have probably sustained what we've been able to do. Hopefully my connection is okay and I am still here, and if anybody has any questions, do feel free to ask. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicola, and great to have that recording and know that we definitely have that, and that Nicola is still with us, so when we move to the discussion you can bring your questions for Nicola. So moving now from Belfast over to London, and I'd like to introduce Sobia and Ruth from Transition Town Ilford. Sobia works as a qualified energy advisor for Crew Energy, and she founded Transition Ilford's community energy group. She is an avid networker and passionate about all things community energy, and she trains the Energy Cafe volunteers and provides professional support to them during the energy cafes. Ruth is a member of Transition Town Ilford's steering group, and she helped set up the community energy group and the cafe and continues to actively support it. Their community energy group was formed in 2019. Their first projects included helping community and faith buildings in Ilford to fundraise for LED lights. Then they did a Solar for Schools project, and later bought a thermal camera with seed money from Transition Together to loan to people wanting to understand the heat loss from their homes. They began the Energy Cafe just over a year ago based on a model used by projects in South London, and we are looking forward to hearing more about it. I'm handing over to Ruth first.
Great. Thank you very much, Chris, and thanks everyone for coming. The last two projects were about food, and this one's going to be about energy. As Chris said, we're from Transition Ilford in East London, and the area we work in is a very disadvantaged area, the south of Ilford. As Chris has already said, we did a number of projects when we first began as a community energy group, and then COVID struck, and those projects ended, and then the cost of living crisis started to kick in. So as Sobia had been working first as a volunteer and then as a paid advisor with South East London Community Energy and Crew Energy, she was very keen that we have a go at energy cafes. She is our passionate advocate for all things to do with community energy, and you'll hear from her in a few minutes. So we had her experience to hand, and we thought this was a really good way of combining two aims. One was our original aim of energy saving because of our work for the climate crisis, but now we had the additional aim of saving money as well, because many people are struggling with, as you know, as we all have, with bills. So the steps we took to set up is quite similar in some ways, not surprisingly, I guess, to the last project. Firstly, we wanted a multicultural team to reflect the local population. And so as well as recruiting from our pool of transition volunteers, we also went to the local interfaith forum to ask them to provide some volunteers. So we had a good mix of people training for our original volunteer team. We also looked into partnerships, and the partnerships we've had have been really useful. A local church fundraised for us for our first training and also gave us the space to use for that training, which was great. Perhaps the biggest partnership has been with an already existing Transition Ilford project called the Repair Cafe, which is also, it's a fantastic and very flourishing cafe which happens every other Saturday afternoon in Ilford Library. And of course that also addresses the cost of living crisis in the sense that people don't need to keep buying new things. And it's expanded and expanded from basically appliances to now doing mending clothes, to doing laptops and phones, and really all sorts of things go on there on a Saturday afternoon. So they kindly offered us a table in that space, and that's benefited us because while people people are waiting for all their repairs to be done, we can grab them and start to talk about energy with them, and they're glad for someone to chat to while they're hanging around. So that's been a really good partnership for us. And just recently, we've linked up with the Friends of the Earth, who are more in the campaigning mode, and they're trying to campaign that the government do street by street retrofitting of homes. So Sobia is on the committee for that, and they very much want to encourage our energy cafe as well. So we also needed a little bit of funding, and we bought with it things like radiator reflector foil and LED light bulbs and lagging for pipes. And we give the bulbs and the reflector foil away at the Energy Cafe, so people can take them just as a sample really, but to encourage them to use them. I'll explain a bit more about what advice we give on that in a minute. So once we trained our volunteers, we then put the onus on that group to become the planning group for the project. So different volunteers took responsibility for different aspects, and particularly important was the role of a coordinator. And you'll see a little clip in a minute of our first coordinator, who was fantastic, very enthusiastic. And like the other projects, we're all about people. We're about building groups, about it building involvement, building confidence, and cooperating together. So that part of the group building was very important for us. So I wonder now if we could just have a look at the chart, Chris, of on the screen, if you would share it. Sorry, yeah, Mike is going to do it now, whoever's doing it. Yeah, so this is just a very, very brief graphic to show the steps we took. And I think Sobia will tell us later about a much more detailed plan for how you can set up an energy cafe that is done by the Centre for Sustainable Energy. So recruiting volunteers, building a team, fundraising, finding a venue, building partnerships. We did set up a simple recording system with a Google form for all our conversations, so we can measure what we do a little bit. We publicised the cafe and now are beginning really more to do networking with other local agencies. We actually trained our energy champions first, but Sobia pointed out to me it's probably best to train them later in the process, actually, because it's good to start doing it as soon as you're trained. Then you get interested. If you wait a long while before you start, you lose interest. And then launch the cafe. So in a minute, we're just going to look at a short clip of what our table looks like at the cafe. But I want you to just imagine a bustling library on a Saturday afternoon, people coming to bring their books back. There's a cafe next to us, which is why we can't actually serve tea and coffee at our cafe, because the library has a cafe. And we have the repair cafe space and our little space within that. And there's lots of bars, and people are bringing kettles and dresses to mend and kettles to fix and all the rest of it into the repair cafe. And we've got our table ready to start. So this is just a short clip with Angelina, who was the first coordinator, introducing what's on our table. Thank you.
Getting ready for the Energy Cafe. Hello, Joe, Angelina, Lavina and Ruth. What have you got here?
Energy bulbs, radiator reflectors, glazing film, pipe plugging equipment, more radiator reflectors, draft, preventers.
Okay, thank you. It's just to give you a sense of, you can hear all the noise and the buzz in the background. We're ready to start. So what we actually do when people come to talk with us is a number of things. We ask what they're interested in. If they're interested in some small DIY tips, then we talk about things like the radiator foil. And I have to say, this seems to be the thing people remember most when we ask them, whether it's, I don't know, something really easy that everyone can do. So we show them about, on the graphic, on the picture there, you can see we're just making a little secondary glazing example that you can tighten with a hairdryer. So we were showing people these basic DIY measures, and also talking about simple energy saving strategies like doing your washing at 30 degrees and so on. And again, talking of poverty and what we're seeing, people were saying we're not even using hot water to wash our clothes. We're just washing them in cold water now. So you get the sense of where people are. If people are struggling with bills, Sobia particularly is our guru, because she knows about all the discounts and grants and sources of help for people who are struggling with bills, and she signposts people to them. At the other end of the spectrum, if people are really keen to do big things like home insulation or double glazing or air source heat pump, then when there are government and local government grants, we can help people to, we can direct them to how they can apply for those grants. And if we'd had time, I could have shown you Maria talking about how pleased she was when she got her house, walls of her house insulated. So that's basically what we do. And as I said, sadly, we aren't really a cafe because we can't serve tea and coffee. So just the second clip is also very brief. It's just one person's feedback. And in fact, this customer, if that's the right word, was so happy. He joined us as a volunteer and for a little while became our coordinator. So would you just show the second clip now, Mike?
Hey, so how did you find today's session?
The session was very good. I have got a couple of tips on how to save energy, and then maybe I need to buy a couple of things as well to make my house more insulated as well as save some bucks on energy. So yes, it was very useful.
Yes.
Quite informative. And I guess this initiative, especially for the repairing and the energy saving, is very good. And this is something very new, and I guess I would look forward to coming here again and again.
And I'll try to volunteer as well, for sure.
Thank you. Sorry about the background noise, but I think you get the sense of it there. So, as well as our fortnightly energy cafes, we've also done them at a Muslim community centre with the women from the Arabic classes there. We've gone to a children's centre. We've been to an Asian women's welfare group, and also a group for people caring for relatives with dementia, and done an energy cafe at an Eco Day at a local church. So we're very much open to going further than the library. Challenges, there have been some, and these include, I think, retaining volunteers, keeping up with the constant changes in information and grants from governments and local government and so on, and energy providers. And publicising the sessions more widely, because we do very much rely on the energy, on the repair cafe clientele, though we do go around the library dragging people in as well sometimes. However, we're very happy with the way things have gone, and we would encourage you to think about starting an energy cafe. And I think Sobia will say a bit more, but we would be very happy to have individual Zoom calls with any transition group that would be interested. But now Sobia is going to tell you a little bit about the national resources that are available if you wanted training or if you wanted to start an energy cafe. Thank you.
One of the obvious, I think, sources of help for most people would be your local council, and the support that they're willing to give varies. It really does vary. I mean, some councils are so open to and community energy projects. Others are very reluctant to engage with you, and you have to really push them. But if you can find one person in your council who's very concerned with issues. Sorry about that. It can really help. So that person is there to support you whenever you need guidance, whatever funding's available, they can let you know. Other sources of help, I would say Community Energy England is one of them. They are national, of course. In London, we attend the Community Energy London meetings, and they are every month, but they would be helpful for anybody, not just community energy groups in London. I think they're just good, very good for inspiration. They can give you an idea of the sort of things you could do. And what I mean by that is not necessarily just the fuel poverty projects, but other projects relating to solar panels, heat pumps, etc. You'll have all kinds of people coming and sharing what they've already done, or the funding that's available. And often, you know, you have council officers coming there as well. Centre for Sustainability in Bristol is another one. They have their own food poverty projects and other community energy projects, but also they give training to various groups, partner with other groups. And then we have the National Energy Association, the NEA. I think Ruth is going to be putting some of these links in the chat for me. Yeah. And NEA is very good resource because they regularly run training programs for energy advisors or energy champions. And what's even better is sometimes they have funded places available. So if you're just starting out, you don't know what to do, just go on their website and take a look at what's available for free. They have a few courses available at a few places left on the technologies. So it's just explaining what solar is, what heat pumps are. So there's it may have gone by now, so apologies if it has, but they keep updating their website with the new opportunities, so it's really good to keep an eye on them. There's other community energy groups, like the I think Chelsea, Ruth may have mentioned, that's South East London Community Energy, and they were our inspiration. They were the ones that were able to train me, and I volunteered with them for a while. And then I went on to work with Crew Energy, and they're both based in one's based in Southeast and one's in Southwest. So what you'll find with a lot of these community energy groups is that they're very willing to help. There's always somebody there, you know, you can turn to for advice, very open, very, very nice, approachable people. And that really helps when you're starting anew, when you know, you're just setting up and you don't know who to turn to, and you can literally contact anybody and they are willing to help or put you in the right direction. I think the chart, sort of the infographic, whatever you want to call it, that Ruth shared is quite good. But in that, I think you have to be very careful with your insurance. It's one of the things that I was not an expert at, and I had to get Roz, who's on the call, I believe still, and she had to help us a fair bit with that, making sure that we were covered. So that was something quite new for me. But you know, anybody who's got any background experience on social media, making posters, flyers, it all comes in handy. You know, these are all transferable skills. And the more young people you can get in your group, the better, because they tend to be better at this than some of us. So
I really want to thank you too for sharing the inspiration, but also lots of practical steps for how to set up a project like that in your own area. But last and definitely not least, I'd love to hand over to Steve Jones, who is the founder of Community Roots Permaculture Project based in Bolton. Steve has been learning about permaculture since he first discovered it in the early 1990s and sees it as a way of addressing multiple systemic failures that threaten our well-being and existence on this wonderful planet. By nurturing some respect and reverence for nature, he believes we can look at the world and what we perceive as resources in an entirely new way. Steve's personal mission is to get working class people into permaculture thinking as a means of social and ecological change, and most recently using yet another Transition Together seed funding grant to create new opportunities for people on his estate to grow food and skills, something that Steve and I recently got to highlight in the latest edition of Permaculture magazine, available in all good newsagents. Steve, we're looking forward to hearing from you about your work. Unfortunately, Steve also has some internet challenges, and so he isn't able to share his video, but Mike's going to show you what he looks like, and so you can imagine him speaking to you just now. Over to you, Steve.
Right, well, thanks for the introduction, Chris, and good evening, everybody. from not so sunny Bolton. Right, so I'm from Salford originally, which is a city in its own right at the side of Manchester. It's a very poor city, and I've lived in Bolton now for 24 years. Bolton's quite a sort of medium-sized northern town, and it's an incredibly poor town. There is a wealthy little bit of it that heads out towards the sort of rural areas, but there's quite a lot of issues of multiple deprivation in the town. There's poor health, there's drug use, there's low pay, fairly low quality employment, and it's a very, very skint town with a lot of issues. And I noticed this. I mean, I come from quite a poor background, but I noticed the difference when I moved to Bolton in the year 2000. So just a little bit, I think it's always good to tell a bit of a story about how you got from A to B, particularly with permaculture. So Community Roots project started back in 2013, and we were absolutely desperate for land to grow food on, and we pestered everybody, councils, local organisations, and we were sort of on the verge of giving up. There was nothing about at all. And we were approached by an organisation called Forever Manchester, who came about because of the rioting in Manchester in 2011. They made millions of pounds worth of funding available. And we teamed up with Forever Manchester. They funded us, and we ended up with a food growing project on a clay tennis court that's about a quarter of a mile away from where I live. So we put loads of raised beds on the tennis court, and we set this project up really quickly. And we attracted local unemployed people who were interested in gardening, and just people who generally thought, oh, what's going on over there? Let's go and have a nose at it. And we were always really friendly, inviting people down to have a brew and a chat. So we ended up with around sort of 6 people who were regularly attending. We grew tons and tons of food. And this is sort of like, I'd say 3 or 4 years after the credit crunch, but due to the level of poverty and people not having access to cleanly grown food in Bolton, we were giving tons of food away to the YMCA and other little organisations. And this is before food banks kicked in. We were giving bin bags of food away every week that we grew. So we were quite happy about that, and happy about the fact that it was being used. So this project ran in this manner quite intensely for about 2 years, and then we got sidetracked, but in quite a good way. A local housing charity got interested in our work and gave us a chance to roll out our work. So we went up to an area called Breakmet, which is a very poor council estate, basically on a hill on the other side of Bolton. It's high unemployment, people don't leave school with great qualifications, poor diets, ill health, substance misuse, and it's absolutely rife on the estate. So for 6 years, with the help of this housing group, we worked with 25 families a year, and we provided the families with resources, raised beds, fruit trees, fruit bushes, seeds, soil, little portable greenhouses, everything that you need to grow food in your garden. And because we were subcontracted out by an organisation, we were seen for the individuals that we are, rather than as seen as working for organisations. People can be a bit funny sometimes about organisations. So we managed to get quite a good level of communication with people. After 2 or 3 months of doing it, they were introducing us to the families, inviting us in the house for a brew and something to eat. And we got really close with communities. And we noticed some incredible things went on while we did this 6 years, helping people to grow. We worked with a group of Congolese women who sadly, all of the husbands and the sons of fighting age had been killed over in the Congo. So there was a group of around 12 women, and their growing skills were incredible. They were able to grow squashes in 3.5 months' time, and they were growing huge courgettes, loads of carrots, loads of salad stuff. And they were really very generous with it. They were sharing it with the neighbours. So there's a sort of a community cohesion element there, even back in the day when we began this work. And another guy we helped a guy out who had a few raised beds in this community allotment site. We helped him out with a bit of advice and some resources. And he became really fired up, this guy, Chris, and he ended up, this was at the time when the DWP were sanctioning people's benefits for turning up 5 minutes late to appointments, leaving people with no money whatsoever. And one day this Chris said, well, I'm really browned off with this, and he went and cropped loads of produce from his plot and bagged it all up into individual bags. And he went round visiting people's houses and dropping food off for people who had nothing and people who'd been sanctioned. And this really touched us and sort of really inspired us. So that lasted for 6 years. And in that area, we planted around probably about 120 fruit trees over the 6 years. And we worked with around probably about 90 families. We worked with some years we worked with the same family year on end, but we always looked out for newer families to work with. So that came to an end, and then all of a sudden COVID-19 arrived and the pandemic, and we had a little bit of funding from the co-op, and we sat there thinking, well, how can we use this funding to help people? So I did an anonymous phone call to the police, and I said, I'd just like to ask you a question. If I was dropping plants off at people's houses and leaving them at the bottom of the garden with no contact at all, could I class that as permitted exercise? And the policeman said, yeah, you can. And I thought, great, there we go, problem solved. So me and my partner loaded the boot up of our tiny little car about 15 or 16 times with tons and tons of edible plants. And for the spring and much of the summer throughout lockdown, we drove around to people's houses. We told them beforehand using social media. We'd be like, right, well, we're coming round today. We're going to drop you 4 tomato plants off, 2 chili plants, give them advice. And one of the great things about where social media came into its own, we were able to provide support and training over social media when we drop the plants off. So you'd suddenly get a question, it'd be, will this particular variety of chilies grow outdoors? And the answer would be either yes or no. So we thought that was quite a good success and quite a good use of our time, really. And then towards the end of lockdown, we bumped into our growing friends who are very similar to us, called Bolton Diggers. Bolton Diggers have been going for a long time. They've been promoting organic horticulture and healthy eating for around 2 decades. And I was chatting to Alan about maybe having our own site. And Alan said, well, we've got a bit of a chunk of land on our site that's not being used, and if you want to use it, you can use it free of charge. So myself and Ben went down, and we were absolutely over the moon. So we've got an area the size of a football pitch, and it's on a huge allotment site, but the particular bit that the diggers and ourselves use, it's not the sort of land that's good enough to let out for allotment plots. It's got poor drainage. Apparently the soil isn't very good, although it is if you know how to treat soil properly. So we've got that for free. And then we applied for funding them from the National Lottery. So we bought a polytunnel, raised beds, tons and tons of soil to fill the raised beds with, loads of seeds, plants, fruit trees. So we've put an orchard on our site at the back of the polytunnel. But it also enabled us to go out and do some outreach work, delivering sessions. So we've done rocket stove workshops, we've done 3 introductions to permaculture. And because we were funded and we don't really take the mickey with our sessional fees. Some people charge £200 to deliver an introduction to permaculture. Me and Ben took £50 each for delivering the session, and we charge people £0 to get in. And this is part of our thing of, obviously, I am a teacher by trade, and, we all have bills to pay, but at the same time, let's not sell it as a luxury commodity. Let's get it out to people so they can utilise these ideas. So we ran loads of workshops, and we're still doing them now. We're working with a group of people with severe mental health issues who were isolated throughout lockdown. And we do every Thursday afternoon, we do a permaculture and wellbeing session. And it's a very, very diverse session. Some people play chess, some people do gaming, some people come outside and talk about nature and do gardening with us. And it's that whole idea. It's to sort of touch on the people care ethic of permaculture. It's instead of just having all of these prescribed exercises to do every week where we will do this, we will sow this, we will graft that, we let people do what makes them feel happy and comfortable. So if you walked in on our session, you might think it's like a little community group or the sort of activities that would be going on in somebody's front room in a house, but it's actually not. It's in its own way, it's planned and organised, and it's about letting people find their own sort of level of well-being by getting together. And we're just there as a cement and to provide a little bit of guidance. So that's still running from this. I think we got £10,000 rewards for all. So we've been running sessions for a year. As I say, me and Ben, who deliver the sessions, we're not greedy at all. We take £50 for each session. The story behind Ben himself, and he actually doesn't mind me saying this, when Ben came to us in 2015, he was suffering with quite bad anxiety and depression. So Ben's joined our team. There's only a couple of us, and he comes round, helps people grow stuff, converses with people, will drive out and buy resources, etc. So Ben's come an awful long way since then. He did a full PDC course with Angus Souter, and he's now doing a degree in community development and youth work. So it's really helped Ben as well as him being a member. It's helped me as well. I mean, I've had 65 jobs in my life, and there's zero job satisfaction in any of them at all. But I like to see that I'm helping people in my work directly. So it helps me doing this as well as helping the people who we help, if that makes any sense. So we've got our site up and running. We're doing all these sessions, and then I found out about transition seed funding, and I thought, this looks great. This is a really accessible thing. And one of the things, I mean, you're probably familiar yourselves, anybody who applies for funding. Sometimes the criteria can be quite narrow, but what I liked about transitions, it was quite broad, so it gave us the chance to deal with multiple issues, which in permaculture is all about stacking functions. So we have the issue of being able to help with climate change by planting dozens of fruit trees all around the estate where I live, being able to provide fruit for people who can't afford to buy fruit because it's gone so expensive. And then for me, another great reason for having the fruit trees on the estate was bringing pollinators and various different insects back that just haven't been there over the decades because of the dwindling greenery in the area. So this seed funding from Transition enabled us. Initially, we put in to buy 70 fruit trees, but being the thrifty folk that me and Ben are, we actually bought 85. We were buying fruit trees and fruit bushes from car boot sales. We were buying them from B&M bargains, from home bargains. We didn't touch B&Q at all because B&Q's fruit trees are about 25 to 50 pounds each. And our idea was just, look, let's get as much of it out there as we can and into people's gardens. And we had an incredible time doing it. We were actually, Ben's got a tiny little car, so we've got this little 1000cc car with all these fruit trees sticking out of the back of his door, a real sort of steptoe type affair. And the estate that we delivered to 2 estates. Both the estates are really, really high in poverty and social deprivation. So we had quite a good uptake of the fruit trees, and there's quite a lot of antagonism between different communities on the estates in Bolton. And one thing that we noticed was if we were giving Muslim and white Boltonian families fruit trees, and it was starting conversations between neighbours. Now, those neighbours wouldn't have spoken if it wasn't for those fruit trees. As one of the speakers mentioned before about food bringing people together, this was our example of it happening. And on one day during one of the Islamic festivals, we had 3 Muslim families say to us that what we were doing was a beautiful act of self-giving. And it really touched me and Ben to the point of, sort of welling up with tears. And we had an old Muslim guy patting us on the back, and he said, this really is beautiful work. It's great for the people, and it's great for nature and great for the area. So that was quite a success, really, the fruit tree project. After it ended, we had up to another 30 odd people asking for fruit trees. So what we're looking at next year is expanding the project and working not only with community members, but with organisations. We've already approached schools. I mean, when you think about how mind-blowing it is to spend £100 at a school and have a functioning orchard at the school for £100, it's dead easy. It makes tons of sense, and there's going to be fruit for the next however many decades if these trees are well looked after at the local schools. So we're going to kindly ask Transition again if they'll fund us next year, and we're looking at up to now we're thinking that we could plant maybe 400 fruit trees all across Bolton. And it's one of those things, isn't it? When you look at things that grow really well in areas, fruit grows really well in Bolton. Cherries, apples, pears grow incredibly well. Soft fruits grow incredibly well. So we're going to do that again next year, hopefully with any luck. But another angle I'd like to come at from certainly... Steve,
tell us your last thing, but I think we want to just make sure we have a little bit of time for questions and discussion after that.
Yeah. Right, so the last thing, the thrifty growing thing, that started in the 1990s when I ended up unemployed in a little 2-bedroom house in Salford. And I saved seeds from vegetables. I scrounged seeds from old guys at the allotment. I found 2 tons of soil in a rubbish skip that I loaded up in a rucksack and made raised beds in my back garden. And I actually started a garden that fed me for 2 years and it cost absolutely nothing. So anybody who's got nothing, I suggest either save seeds or go and join one of the many community food growing projects that are popping up all over the UK. They're absolutely everywhere. Just check social media out in your area and you're bound to find one. So that's me.
Thank you so much, Steve, and thank you to all our speakers. Honestly, I could listen to you all night, but I really want to leave some space for the people who have joined us who might have questions or might be thinking about challenges in their own community or things they would like to implement. So we just have about 10 minutes left, but I want to open the floor for people who've been listening to bring your questions and reflections. And if you can be brief, it would be brilliant, because then we'll be able to hear from some more people.
It's not a question, I'm afraid. I mean, that was absolutely fantastic. And talk about inspiring, and just the energy of people. It's so inspiring to hear people's energy and what they can make happen. All of you, it's just brilliant. So I'm just so glad to have had a chance to listen to that. And it's reminded me, I had a note on my desk which said Energy Cafe Restart, and I was thinking, why have I got a note saying Energy Cafe Restart? And I think it's because someone somewhere told me that putting an energy cafe at your restart would be a good idea, and I've now got a proper note saying how to do it, because I was looking at our restart party on Saturday, and we have 40 people queued and waiting and sitting there, and they're chatting to each other, and that would be just such a brilliant thing for them to have the opportunity to talk about energy at the same time. So that's my takeaway, and thank you very much. It's not a question, but I just want to say thank you, really.
Brilliant, Hilary, thank you. Has anyone else been inspired to take something on in their area?
I do love the idea of all the food projects. We are thinking about something along those lines at Ilford. It's nothing concrete yet. We're early days, very, very early days, just thinking about an idea. We'd love to have a community fridge. Oljai, who's not here with us today, has been talking about this. But yeah, that is something to learn from you, Joe. And even I mean, we have a forest garden in our local park, but it's just inspiring that other people are already doing all this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sobia. One thing that's really struck me is the different contexts in which people are working. So Joe's there in a village of 2,000 people, and look what they've been able to do that is, relevant in your context, right the way through to London or Belfast, bigger cities. And one of the benefits of transition, I think, is we can take ideas from somewhere else and then we can root it in our own soil and work with local people to figure out what way of it growing suits in our local conditions. Anybody else got any questions or anything they would really love to hear from our speakers?
I wonder if I could ask the gentleman who's just spoken a little bit about how he starts the conversations. He described a really diverse community, and it sounds like he's had a huge success in actually getting acceptance, getting people involved. But I don't think that's to be taken for granted. And I wondered if he's got any tools about the kind of way that he started those conversations, because I think he's obviously done extremely well there. It's a really impressive project.
Yeah, it's a very, very good question indeed. And the way me and Ben approached, I mean, we're quite I don't know how you describe us really. We look like I've got a bald head and I'm 6'2", and Ben's got hair down to his backside. So we're quite quirky looking, let's say. But we have this little sort of patter, and you have to say it very quick because when people knock on doors in this area, people tend to think they're going to be conned or somebody's going to try and sell them something. So we knocked on the door. We went, "Hi, we're giving fruit trees away free of charge, and if you like, we'll plant one in your garden now." And we said it in a very friendly, down-to-earth way, with big Cheshire cat grins on our faces, and it worked. And we got invited. I think people seem to trust us really quickly, and we would get. You'd know somebody for 2 minutes, and they're inviting you in the house for a brew, and that was great. And I think that very direct, sort of cheeky chappy approach of just being really friendly and down to earth worked, especially given how we look. You know, I mean, somebody actually said you look like a Swedish death metal band. So I think we managed to overcome that with the cheeky chappy approach, I think. And it did work, and it's worked in different areas. And I think because you've got sincerity in what you're trying to do and you're committed, I think it comes out a little bit in your banter when you're speaking to people. Because we've just done this off our own backs. We've looked around and thought, everything's falling to pieces. People need to eat. The ecosystems in the area need to be looked after. And we've found the most tangible and down to earth way of doing it, and just got on with doing it really.
Amazing.
So I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Yeah, that answers it brilliantly. I'm just wondering, just to clarify, was it literally conversations on the doorstep, or did you put up some posters in the area to say like tree planting going on? Have you had your tree, or any social media stuff, or was it literally just those conversations?
No, we took a very dangerous approach of just deciding that it'd be a good idea and doing it.
Yeah, amazing.
We told nobody whatsoever. The only people who knew about it beforehand were Transition Network. And I think what allowed me to be cheeky enough to do that was knowing that there was a need there, having sort of worked in community food for sort of 7 or 8 years previous to it, and seeing what was going on with the cost of living crisis, seeing massive queues at food banks, and you just think sometimes you intrinsically know, don't you, right, this needs doing.
Yeah.
So I think that helped really.
Amazing.
But yeah, perhaps it was a little bit dangerous not planning it and not letting people know, but it worked anyway. So thankfully.
Brilliant.
I think also in our social media age, it's very easy to forget about just that one-to-one connection and that relationship, and just saying hiya to your neighbour and seeing what comes of it. But the other thing I love about your project, Steve, is you are really tangibly helping your community and giving something back and giving something practical, but you're like planting a tree that is theirs and is going to be producing food for years to come. So it's not a kind of one-off handout that then, there's nothing to show for it the next week. You're giving people something that allows them to produce their own food for years to come.
That's it, and it's part of permaculture again. It's that succession thing, and about because everything in society is all throwaway, isn't it? Even when you look at how the West grows food, everything's seasonal. It grows for 8 months, and then that's it. And we're trying to create a permanent culture, and I think planting fruit trees and perennial crops is a part of creating a permanent culture. I think, hopefully, it is anyway.
Okay, well, I just want to say a huge thank you to our speakers this evening for such amazing, practical and rich examples of what they're doing.